And number one, Samsung and LG smart mobile semiconductor and LG display, and POSCO and Hyundai and Korean hydro nuclear power plant is building is Abu Dhabi power plant. And then, as you know, in 1960s, about 40 or 60 years ago, only $79 per capita in year, per capita GDP, the poorest country in the world. Korea, South Korea is the poorest country in the world. Now, in the PPP standard, it's more than $40,000 per capita. And then this year, 12s, last year was 11s and 12s, 11s and 12s, and gross GDP scale. It's top 7 country among the 50 million population groups. And then I like to ask you or ask myself, what happened and why and how and why? How effective policymaking massively determined the success and progress of South Korea? My analysis has 3 items. First one was that there was a focus and clear objective and goal. I would like to say that Korean policy focus was that high speed, high tech, digital network, and digital government. Objective is strong and effective infrastructure, and goal was that effective policymaking and smart government. For the second chief, let me say about there was a strategic approach for the effective policymaking. For the effective framework, I like to ask Leiju about 3 questions, and which policy we should pursue, and whose initiation? Is it government or a society or business or a PPP? And then strategic policy set. And then for the question of which policy, I like to say to you about 3 standards: industrial spillover, technological spillover, and market spillover. These are the criteria to make industrial strategy. Then we can have effective policy framework. And then for the last chief, not leastly, decade-wise, there was a economic strategy. So there was a clear pattern of Korean effective policy making. So as you know, the 1960s is lightware industry. In the 1970s is heavy and chemical industry stage. In the 1980, Korean government already jumped into the CDMA and ISDN network or some telecommunication project. In the 1990s, Korean government jumped into the speed internet project, information superhighway, and high-speed broadband infrastructure, network government, and ADSL, 3G, Vibro, DMB. And then after post-2000, e-government and smart e-government, and now fourth industrial revolution, self-driving car or smart cities, and something like artificial intelligence and bio and nano and robot issue. So these are some kind of decade-wise, there was some economic policy making. So this is very important issues for Korea. So overall speaking, lesson and implication, I would say having a vision and strategy for the effective policy making, but in more detail, there should be a clear focus and clear goal, and there should be some kind of a very effective framework, which policy we should start, whose initiation, and let's have a strategic policy set. This kind of mindset or this kind of approach is, I think, very important. And of course, I should mention about Park Chung-hee leadership. In 1960 and 1970s, and he set the cornerstones. He set the very strong infrastructure or economic infrastructure for Korea, for South Korea. So not only lightware, but also heavy chemical industry is very important economic structure. So I think today's economic success, maybe if we can say a little bit success or some progress for the South Korea is largely due to the strong and committed leadership of Park Chung-hee, or Park Chung-hee's policy design was great in those 2 decades. And then the next president, I think they do well maybe, but they are based on the Park Chung-hee's foundation. I think it is fair. So maybe later on, when we frequently, when we talk about the Korean effective policy framework, was what makes South Korea happen or possible. I would like to talk about Park Chung-hee's strategy and Park Chung-hee leadership, or Park Chung-hee's design, policy design. Even COVID-19 issues. Park Chung-hee did national insurance in the 1970s. He started from the 1977. He started national, medical insurance, relatively very cheap, and all the people can access to the even Samsung hospital relatively cheap cost, cheap prices. So that the starting was the Park Chung-hee's innovation in 1977. So that was the foundation for the COVID-19 was successful and possible at this stage. At this moment, let me stop here, and if you have any questions, let's talk to you and let's interaction with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. You want to elaborate a little bit on the COVID response? We still have 10 minutes, or unless the participants have any questions, they can raise their hand. They can either talk or write the question directly or type it in the Q&A. Probably before going to the to the COVID response, I would like to share this poll with the participants. I'm launching a poll now. So you can see here one question. What do you think
is the main success factor behind South Korea's success in mastering COVID-19 crisis?
Is it leadership? Is it effective policy? Is it digital capacity? Or is it the society, the number one? Of course, all of them have played a role, but number one. So we can see now the results, and then based on the results,
I also want to select as an effective policy for myself.
Okay, I think we still have 9 votes missing. If you can just help us, all of you. So we have now 15 votes from 24, 16. Another 10 seconds, and then we close the vote. Okay. So these are the results now. Share results.
I think this is very fair enough and very good result.
Okay. So we have effective policy is number one as a success factor, followed by the society education awareness, and then followed by leadership. Thank you very much.
That's very good. By the way, I was wondering, digital capacity in Korea, smart kit and drive-through and kind of working through, this kind of smart approach was very effective also. So it is fair to say that digital capacity is also part of the effective policy, Adil.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If you can go to the slides.
Should we move on the COVID-19 issue?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you for your research. Now, let's talk to the COVID-19. And before the COVID-19, let me briefly mention about 1 or 2 slides. First one was that, so from up until now, I have been talking about effective policymaking and online training. What is human dignity and what will be learned for the effective policymaking? So, for example, human dignity. So I think we need to have a new capacity building. So new capacity building, meaning that we need to identify fundamental issues faced in your society. Not only your society, I would say that in your agency or in your branch or in your department. So as someone mentioned, in your technology ministry or department, and when I say about fundamental issues, is that try to focus on deeply into your thinking, deeply identify about what is the fundamental issue in my job area. So I would like to raise much of you, all of you, in your topic, in your desk, or in your research, or in your department, and try to find out what is the fundamental issues in my branch. And then second one is that we have to perform data-based or evidence-based policy making. And by that, I mean, we need to have a good policy analysis or good policy evaluation. We need a little bit talking about some technologies or methodologies. We need some method to analyze what is the evidence-based policy making. Okay, so obviously to do that, I will teach on these topics with online training and effective policy making, attitude change, smart e-government, and e-transformation. These are should be all the issues for my workshop and class. So Laswell's policy science has three components: problem orientation, and contextuality orientation, and the interdisciplinary orientation. Problem orientation, you may think that this is a kind of common sense, but it is not. If you study about economics or economics or political science, they are many theoretical oriented. They are not the very problem orientation. In the microeconomics, they are many focusing on the formula or some narrow-minded statistics. But in policy science says that problem solving in our society is most important principle. So that's the policy science. The other one is contextuality is kind of obvious. We in Oman and the UAE and the Middle East has own context maybe, and South Korea has another context. So we need to, when we do the comparative study, we need to approach with some context-based approach. And third one and final one is interdisciplinary orientation is kind of obvious. To solve the policy science problem, we need sometimes technologies, we need business administration, we need even psychologists and political science issue. So sometimes we need some kind of engineering or natural science or some quantum physics issues. So interdisciplinary approach, as you know, the policy problem in modern times, the uncertainty, volatile, VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertainty, complexity,